Man, some of you guys had me rolling with some of your comments in my last video about how did you get that shot like this, and like this? Are you busting part 107 and flying drones out in front of your aircraft? No, I am not. I am flying with an Insta360 X4 camera mounted to a pole on the front of my aircraft. Totally legal, totally legit. We're gonna get into all the details about how to do that, my mount setup, kind of some limitations and some good things with the camera. We're gonna take it for a walk down to the river, and then finally we're gonna go into the post-production room edit and show you how I'm doing some of these edits. So stick around. I'm Steve. Welcome back to Quick Rec. So the X4 is the newest version. Here's the last version, the X3, and I'll kind of explain to you how it works. So there's two sensors, as you can see. They're recording all pixels at all time. You're not editing until later. In fact, that's one of the limitations, is it just takes a ton more time to edit. More on that later. But they both record greater than 180 degrees field of view. And since they're offset a little bit by, I don't know, 3/4 of an inch or so, they're able to overlap and stitch out the selfie stick, the aircraft pole, or whatever else to make it kind of magically float. So that's the magic of the Insta360 cam, pulling the curtain back a little bit on that. But the other cool thing about this is you can control it from the cockpit via Bluetooth and then eventually Wi-Fi. You can see what it's doing, but that's actually also a limitation because the firmware, while they're upgrading it, it's getting a little bit more robust. You're not guaranteed to connect every single time. By the way, I am not sponsored or affiliated. You can tell because I'm being completely honest in this, and it's not a full review. It's just kind of my opinion on how I'm doing this in the aviation world. And we are in beautiful backcountry Idaho today, enjoying the scenery and creating a bunch of content. So I thought I'd take this opportunity to do this. So that was one of the drawbacks, is the connectivity. One benefit is that I reached out to them because one time I couldn't even connect at home. Phone right next to the 360 cam plugged in, power wasn't an issue, and I reached out to customer support. And clearly their customer support is, I think, in China, and it's being translated, but they were very responsive, and they actually gave me a beta firmware to test. It didn't fix the problem, but I was very happy with the customer support and the responsiveness. So they've subsequently improved the firmware in the camera as well as in the phone app, and it's working pretty much flawlessly now. But there have been a few incidents where I've taken off and ready to record and just couldn't connect and lost a whole bunch of data. So let's get into my mount setup. FlightFlix provided me with all the mounts you see here. There's a couple limitations with this setup. One is right here. Okay, this is a segmented mounting pole. It's about, I don't know, 3 feet each segment, maybe a little bit more than that. And this is a weak point. So the designer and inventor of FlightFlix, which you can get via MyGoFlight now, purchased FlightFlix. I'll leave the link in the description. Again, not affiliated or sponsored in any way, except that they did send me this setup, full transparency. But Ryan, the inventor of it, said, hey, don't connect more than 2 of these at once. And you can tell, because it flexes a little bit. If you hit any sort of turbulence, it's bouncing around just a little bit. The X4 is quite a bit more stout than the X3. You can't really tell here, but maybe here, yeah, there you go. It's a little bit more stout, and therefore, you know, the moment arm is a little bit greater right there. The solution to that is I've purchased from just the hardware store, I think it was an 8-foot length or maybe 10-foot length of an aluminum pole, and I've seen folks that do, you know, square channel to make it a lot more rigid. Apparently carbon fiber, unless it's spun and wound the exact right way, and can be a little bit flexible. But there are some good options that do expand. I've seen Trent doing the expander pole, and it really helps if you have a double lift strut. In my case, this single lift strut, you might not be able to mount it to the lift strut. So what I did, since this is an experimental aircraft and I built it myself when I was building it, I put in a 1/4-20 nut plate here and back here, and was able to just screw in their mounts right here, and it's super robust, super simple. And I would probably move this a little bit forward. It doesn't need this whole length of stability, and that way you'd get a little bit more forward. Where do you want it mounted forward? Ideally you'd be forward of your propeller so that you can, you know, look back at your aircraft and have that really neat view, but we're working on that. Drawback of having an 8-foot pole is I can't just remove it and put it in the cockpit. But the good news is you could remove the X3 cam and just fly with that pole. But threat. Watch out around the campsite, especially at night. It's definitely a head dinger if you're a tall person like me. Let me show you another mount setup that will be obvious how I got some of these other shots from the tail view. I've put quarter 20 here and then two 1032s up here, and it's for various reasons. I won't get into why, but this is a double mount and this is a single mount, and it goes forward, and I'm able to kind of capture what I consider to be one of the you know, coolest parts of this paint job right here, as well as flying around and looking out really from any vantage point. And that's another cool thing about this camera, is if you don't want to spend the time in post-production and exporting an actual 16:9 framed footage, what you can actually do is upload the entire 360 to YouTube, and then it's just a cool virtual reality experience. You can put on your goggles or just use your phone and move your phone around and actually feel like you're flying with me out in the backcountry of Idaho. Okay, let's remove this from the aircraft and walk around and check out the river, and then we'll go back into the editing room and show you how I do some of that. One other drawback of this camera is, in my opinion, is the color profiles. I am shooting right now in the flat color profile to gain as much dynamic range and flexibility in the color space as I can. There's two other shooting modes. Let's go ahead and check out normal mode. Okay, this is actually the standard or normal shooting mode. It doesn't, it's kind of the Goldilocks, if you will, if you don't want to do any post-processing. But if you want to have your eyes bleed, let's check out the vivid mode. And this is the vivid color profile. I told you, why am I here? Well, turns out this is another issue, is that it doesn't always record. I recorded the vivid in the backcountry, got home, started editing, and file was gone. So a little bit frustrated with that. So just be careful that it is recording. I'm looking, it is a red light. It is counting up, so we are recording, but I might as well take this opportunity to show you my new carbon fiber logo sticker, perforated vinyl on top of the aircraft, as well as on the doors. There you go. All right, let's go show you how the magic happens in post-processing in the debrief. Let's go. Okay guys, a couple of follow-up items with the camera. It comes with a pretty handy case, as well as it has two detachable, these are the standard lens protectors. I don't really like them and I don't fly with them. There are premium lens protectors, which I don't know anything about, but I just fly it with it just like that. And I suppose if you're flying in a particularly buggy area, then you might want to protect them, but I've never had a problem with them kind of getting scratched. So it's powered off, but Bluetooth wake up is enabled. So let's go to the phone, open the Insta360 app, go to the camera icon, and wake it up to see if it's working.
1 minute later.
And sure enough, like clockwork, connection failed. So I'm going to manually power it up. This is what I'm talking about. And I powered it up like 5 minutes ago. So it's not like it was in some sort of a deep sleep mode. So now that I've powered it up, click wake up. It's going to connect. Okay, we're connected. So I will click the camera button. Touchscreen will turn off while you have preview on your device. So now that I have it on my phone, you can see that it is recording 360 degrees, even though it's set down on the table in front of me, just like that. So, you know, that's looking down, that's looking up. So from here, you've got your color profiles, which we talked about, and then you could have different sort of fields of view, and then here's the resolution. So the 8K is great because invariably, if you're exporting a 16:9 for a YouTube video, you are cropping massively down. So 8K is what you're starting with, and then you're going to get somewhere, you know, somewhere less of that, well below 4K. You know, it's pretty sharp on the details, but it's better to have 8K sensors to then crop down to something smaller than that, right? Because I think the previous generation was something well below 8K. It's probably 4K. Now, frames per second, I'm kind of a purist, and I like the cinematic look, so I shoot everything in 24K, but if you're just getting started, I would recommend starting to shoot in 30 frames per second. A lot of YouTube videos are shot in that. So you can see I'm at 33%. Battery is kind of as you would imagine. It's nothing great. If you're flying in some really, really cold weather, then it's going to be even worse. You can take photos You can take HDR photos. You can take interval for, you know, kind of time lapse. You can take burst. There's star lapse for the night stars kind of moving. That's all cool. And what I do like is you can actually go to a manual mode and set the ISO, the frame rate, the white balance, or just set it back to auto. Okay, enough on that. Let's shut that down and go to the computer and see what we get when we import the files. So first off, I'm a Final Cut Pro user. I edit all my videos on Final Cut Pro, but this is the same as kind of DaVinci Resolve or Premiere Pro or whatnot. But you can see that I like to color grade my own footage. So you can see how flat I shoot, and then I put in a lookup table. This is getting a little advanced for this video, but just to kind of show you the difference in what a flat color profile can do for you. It captures a lot more data, and then in post-production you expand it and let the magic of computers do it rather than on camera. So when you're going to those vivid profiles, you're actually losing a lot of data, and it's very contrasty and very oversaturated. You could correct for it, but that's why I recommend shooting in flat, but it takes a little bit extra time in post-production. But let me tie that together. So Final Cut Pro is where I eventually edit my videos, as I mentioned, but the Insta360 app is another necessary step to get those reframed videos from your Insta360 into something that Final Cut can use, because Final Cut or DaVinci Resolve or Premiere Pro, they don't read, as far as I know, these files here. This is what you get when you are looking at your SD card. So here's a low res video file, and then the Insta360 video file. The associated ones are down here. So you can see the difference in size. So the low res, there's a 1.9 gig, and then the full size is 24 gigabytes. So that gives you, and that was about a 20 or 30 minute video of me flying in the canyon of Idaho. And then to give you a representation, so this video was just the quick one I shot with a flat color profile. This is the standard color profile, and then of course number 4 was that lost one of vivid, and then I re-recorded it on 5, just to give you a sense of how short and how much gigabytes is taken up per minute. So I fly around with the 256 gigabyte SD card in here, but I think you can easily get away with 128. Just make sure it's fast enough to record, 8K video. So when you open up, it doesn't matter which one you click. Let's just focus on the long one. So let's just open up that one of me bombing down the canyon of Idaho on my way to Upper Loon. And this is what you get. It's kind of fun to mess around with. So what you want to first start off with is if you're just exporting media, or it does have a kind of a video editor inside of it. I haven't messed with it very much. It's clunky enough as it is. They're improving it. They're getting better and better. But I just choose to use the media option up here and then export a 16:9 video. If you're into the vertical video thing, you can go 9:16 and then export that way for social media. And then there's other formats as well. If you're really cinematic, you can go like that. But we'll just go back to 16:9. You can also export stills. So for this video's thumbnail, I didn't take a still. I just pulled it from a frame similar to this from the video itself, and I hit take a snapshot right there. You can go full screen as well. Okay, so this is what you've got. You've got your player down here. I've already got some edit points in here, so let's just expand that back out to the full length. There's the beginning of the video, there's the end of the video, and of course you can zoom in and zoom out. Okay, you can skim through it, find the portion that you want to export. Before I get into that, take a look at these two tabs up here. So this is exporting a reframed video, and then this one is exporting a full 360 video. So you can see this is every pixel that it's recorded. You can see the nose is cut off, but guess what? It's over there. So this is if you want to export a full 360 video that you can view with goggles or with your phone or whatnot, that I showed you with that heads-up display with that cool compass on the ground. That's another trick that I'll show you here in a second as well. But let's go back to exporting a reframed video for kind of general YouTube consumption. You can zoom in, zoom out, reframe it, but it's not going to take effect until you insert a keyframe. That is key, all right? So what I mean by that is let's just export a small chunk, because we don't want to export 20 minutes of this, okay? That would be a boring video, even though I have done it. So let's just choose a portion from here. This is the in and out points right there. Okay, so let's go ahead and zoom into that area and set a keyframe. So we go to the very beginning and we put our first keyframe in, and look at all of these controls you have up there. They will move around as you move the cursor, but you can also change your fields of view for tiny planet or crystal ball. This is the tiny planet. It's kind of a cool effect, right? And then, but let's go back to that keyframe, because once you hit play, and it's a little bit clunky, like I said, it's hard to click on this, and I just moved it. So I don't want it to move that keyframe. So let's zoom in so it's a little bit easier to edit. Click away from it and then click it. And now we got these controls again. There's mega view, there's ultra, and then de-warp. So a little bit less warping, but so less of that curved wing look. And then certain times you can tell the world, it's accelerometer, especially on an airplane, is going to get a little bit tumbleweed. So you want to ensure that you're rolling the horizon to level. Okay. And then you're happy flying along, looking at that view. And then we want to change it to a different view, looking out the front. So if you changed it looking out the front right now, it's going to go between the first keyframe and the last keyframe and slowly move that entire time. Okay, so we didn't want that. We wanted it to stay fixed on the aircraft for a while and then move forward. So let's go ahead and delete this. It's going to stay fixed on the aircraft for, that's a good amount of time. Pause it, set another keyframe without changing anything. And now we're going to start our motion. So go to about right there, set another keyframe, and now we're going to go and look forward off the front of the nose. Maybe zoom in a little bit, see how that looks. So we'll go back to here, play it. Then we look forward. Okay, mind you, it's only, it would bog down your computer if this was if it was using the full 8K. So it's actually using the low res version of this. So don't worry too much if it looks a little bit grainy in here. You're going to export it, and then it'll down process the full resolution video to the 16:9 or whatever aspect ratio you'd like. Okay, another thing that I do is sometimes I will click this little wire between these two keyframes, and I'll fade in and fade out to make it a little bit more gentle of a transition. So we'll see how that looks. Let's come back. It'll slowly fade into the transition and then fade out. So those are important too. If you want to play around with those, you've got all sorts of different options there. On the right hand side, if you want to export the whole video with it just locked on your aircraft, if you didn't have this selected, when you make a turn, it's going to just kind of float off into space. So if you want to stay pointed at a subject or pointed at you and you're holding the camera the same way, same day, it's going to kind of direction lock on you, only if you turn on that selection right there. Here's the lens guards. If you've got, you can set it in auto and it'll figure out what lens guards you've got on. It's kind of messed up. You can see right there that the stitch area is a little bit messed up. So I'm just going to go back to normal because I had those lens guards off. There's dive cases that you can use too, but and then color plus, you can turn that off, and now we're getting a little bit better color. I mean, if you like that super saturated color look, go for it. Seems like a lot of people do these days. Clarity plus is just a little bit less contrast, but then it turns off automatically the color. Motion ND, that's kind of like if you want to try to blur your propeller. It doesn't work really well. Let's turn it on and see if that works. ND filter is a neutral density filter that if you've seen on my GoPros or on my main camera, sometime if it's sunny outside, I want to use a neutral density filter to be able to use a higher f-stop or a wider aperture to get a shallower depth of field. So that's what it's kind of replicating, but you'll notice that it sometimes will turn itself on if it needs to. Let me show you an example of a time where it needs to do that. So let's go into the future here and then go back to the aircraft. set a keyframe, and now click off the keyframe. And now here I want to do a time shift. So this is essentially just speeding up time. So we want to hurry up and get to the landing. So if we want to get to the landing, we got to go to the end. But I will extend this a little bit and then turn this to, say, 16 times speed. Okay. And we hit play. And if you didn't have natural or motion ND filter turned on, it would have naturally turned it on for you or automatically turned it on for you. Because to get that effect, it just looks a little too jittery if it doesn't. So it kind of blurs everything. See how that kind of blurs like everything that's in motion? That's just another effect you can use creatively. Okay. Another thing you can do is deep track. So let's show you another file. So let's close this file and open up the file that I did in front of my aircraft in vivid color profile mode. So you can see my edits, they didn't decay, so they're still there, which is kind of nice. I didn't save them, but they naturally stay there. So we talked about the time shift. So I did a little time shift. You know, I paused a little too long on the door, so I you know, YouTube people's attention spans are pretty short. I paused a little too long up here, so I sped it up, you know, a little bit, sped it up a little bit down there. And then right here, this green area, I had it automatically face detect or automatically, what do they call it? Deep track my face. So let's delete that and try it again. So let's start a deep track right there. And then, we got to point it at my face first, apparently. That's the thing you want to deep track. So turn that on, and then you just draw a box around what you want to deep track. It'll start tracking, and then it'll keep that in the center of your frame. So it's really handy if you just want to set up, if you're doing a task or working on your airplane or moving around a hangar or something, if you just set it up in the corner of the hangar and zoom in it a little bit, it'll just kind of follow you around like you've got a virtual camera person. So let's see how that looks. And yeah, sure enough, even though it's recording everything, mind you, right? So here's an example of, you know, I didn't turn the camera around for this. I just held it up to that same, it was still pointing at my face, but I moved the framing of the video around with keyframes to zoom in on the logo. And then to get a cool look up here, I just zoomed way out to make it look like I was holding the camera way above my head. In fact, you could even go up here and make it look like my arm is really long or it's on a really long pole. But of course, then it gets really distorted, as you would imagine. I hope that that helps. It was probably a little bit more in depth than I was planning on going into, but go out there, mount these to the aircraft, but please be safe in doing it. And I'm so excited to see what you come up with. All right, I'm Steve. Until next time, you're clear direct.
Sink into the bucket, get into the groove. I said, let your body shake and let your body move. Sink into the bucket, get